Hey, you guys. Thanks for listening into this episode with Tips with T. On today, I have Mr. Rhamy with us. How are you doing, Mr. Rhamy?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today to be a guest. So tell us more about yourself and what you do.
Well, I run a HR company called People Processes. We do everything from the most basic of running someone's, payroll, kind of competing with broad companies out there like ADP or Paychex, all the way through a truly outsourced HR function where we provide a down to a payroll clerk, a comptroller, all the way up through we call chief people officer work, where we do things like design and implement employee handbooks, job descriptions, FLSA exemptions. We do the whole audit and kind of build that out. And our goal is to always design and develop the step-by-step processes needed to scale companies, whether that means recruiting or onboarding or performance management, even offboarding, whatever is necessary. We try to put all of those pieces in place so that a company doesn't have a bottleneck around their personnel.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us more about how your journey was for you of becoming an entrepreneur.
I was born an entrepreneur. My mother and my grandmother were both insurance agents, and not particularly successful ones, but they were good at what they did, which was sell Medicare supplements to people age 65 and older. And I loved my grandmother, and I wanted to spend more time with her, but she wouldn't ever let me spend the night on weeknights. Now, in retrospect, it's probably she didn't want her grandkid over there messing around, but she told me it was because she had to cold call on weeknights. Mm-hmm. And I said at 13, "Oh, come on, Gran, I could let me stay. I'll cold call for you. It'll be a blast. I'll cold call." And being my grandmother, she was like, "Okay," and handed me back. This was I'm going to show my age. A giant booklet of cassette tapes, which I had to listen to, and a big licensing book on insurance. And I read it and got all excited, and she never thought I'd go through with it, but I loved every bit of it. And a week later I was back and I was like, okay, let me make some cold calls. And it turns out that 13-year-olds calling 65-year-olds to say, "My grandmother wants to meet with you about Medicare." Money. So good. So good. I mean, they all said yes. I thought cold calling's the easiest job in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I did that for quite a few years. I helped my grandmother and then wound up actually helping multiple other agents set appointments to sell Medicare. I charged a commission. Turns out that was illegal. Turns out you can't pay commissions on insurance products to minors who aren't licensed. And after a couple of years, their insurance company said, "How's this going? How are you guys? You're doing so great. What's the secret?" And they're like, "I'd like you to meet this minor we employ." And that didn't work out. So I had to stop doing that. I couldn't get licensed because you have to be over 18. Mm-hmm. I wound up setting up a lawn mowing company with my friend. We had a truck and riding lawnmowers, and we were mowing a bunch of lawns. He went off to college, so we sold that off. I started working at a cell phone company, selling cell phones. And after all, at State Farm for insurance for a couple months. And I said, you know what, I can do this on my own. And at 22, I started my company, People Processes. At the time, we called it Poplar Insurance Agency. And I just thought I knew it all, man. I was 22, and I mean, I had because of my entrepreneurial journey, I already had saved up a little over $100,000.
That's awesome.
Got out my undergrad, and I said, I'm going to use this to start my company. So I put 90 grand into a company bank account and said, let's launch this thing. 6 months later, I had 5 grand in the bank and payroll due, and I couldn't afford my rent, and it was very bad. So I nearly went bankrupt 6 months after starting my company. And it took another 2 or 3 years for me to figure out my niche, what the product that I did well, differentiate from just being a guy who sells insurance to someone who could help with a specific type. And then another 2 years after that, we wound up moving into the payroll space and acquiring an HR company and growing into what we are now. We've been doing what we do now for the last 5 years. So first 5 years was figuring out what the heck I'm doing. second 5 years, we've really been scaling and growing.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad you bounced back from that. And I mean, we all have our challenges along the way. We all have to figure out, what works and what doesn't work.
If you haven't put your payroll on a credit card yet, you haven't lived. That's the
Yeah.
good stuff.
So like it's a challenge. You really do have to figure things out. Definitely like when you're trying to expand your business and grow your business. And so my next question for you is, when you're looking to recruit someone to hire new employees, what should that process actually look like? What should you know I guess we should look for in potential employees that will help benefit our business?
Good question. The process is going to vary slightly depending on the size of your organization, of course. If you're trying to hire your first VA, it's going to be a little different than if a 500-man company is like, hey, we need to find a new CFO. It's a slightly different process.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, they fall into similar steps. Step one is what I call job analysis. Normally, in a larger company, the way this is done is you ask the people who are doing the job or doing something very similar to the job, what are the key skills, the key personality pieces that are needed to succeed in this job? What is it you do every day? I want to find someone like you. When you're a small business, you don't already have 30 people doing that job, so it's a little bit harder.
Right.
So it's an internal thing. You have to, but it all starts with job analysis. You're going to write out, what is this person going to do every day?
Mm-hmm.
If you only have 3 hours worth of work, you don't need to hire a full-time person.
Yes.
Figure out what they're going to do every day. Write it out like a schedule. Think about what skills you would like someone to have coming on. Recognize that you may not be able to afford that if you're a small business just getting started, but write out the skills you want. And then think about, it's probably just a guess at this point, what sort of personality traits or soft skills that you would like that person to have. If it needs to communicate with your clients and your clients are relatively high strung, they need to be able to take a client yelling at them and not quit. Lay out some of those items. So that's all called a job analysis.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we turn it into a job description. Job analysis, just getting a bunch of information, a lot of opinions. Job description is the formal thing we lay out. Here are the things you need skills. Here are the things you need education. Here are the things you need personality. Here are the physical abilities you need, whatever it is. Job description. Then you write a job ad. So step 3 is a job ad. The job ad should recruit the people who you think will fulfill the job description and will fit into what your company culture looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a very formal organization, don't write a job ad that says, hey, what's up, guys? We're so excited to open a position, that we're such a cool set of people. We want to do this. We hang out on the weekends. We're a family-oriented company. Write a formal job description.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a fun company, don't copy paste a formal job ad that just says, like, we are looking for an accountant with at least 5 years of experience, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, Central Standard. It's not going to work for you. Mm-hmm. So write your job ad to attract the people you want. So we've got 3 steps so far: job analysis, job description, job ad. At that point, you need to put it somewhere. So the advertisement needs to go out there. This is Monster. This is Craigslist. What is it? Indeed is a great one that's free to post a regular job ad. At that point, you're going to get many, many, many applications. And you then want to narrow down what it is you're going to interview for. So you want to do what's called job screening. Very basic. You're trying to weed out most people if they have typos or misspellings on their resume, or they don't meet the minimum requirements of your job description, throw them out. Mm-hmm. Final step, job interview. Mm-hmm. In the interview, you're trying to match your questions, the things you're asking, to the job description. If it says on there you need to have the ability to solve problems in an accounting nature or something like that in the accounting world, you need to ask them not, can you do that? They're going to say yes. You're going to ask them to describe to you scenarios where they had to use that ability and what it looked like. and it'll be very obvious. Even high-level executives, when they don't have the required experience or knowledge, they will go, there was this time I did this thing and it makes no sense. You just let it becomes very obvious. So you interview straight back to that job description. Once you've narrowed down your pool of candidates, I recommend a second round of interviews. I do not recommend a group interview. I don't recommend you defer the responsibility of the choice to someone else. My general rule is you want to interview, check references, ask for support until you are somewhere around 95% confident that this is the right fit. It likely will take a while. One reason that I think small business owners have trouble with this is they expect to put out an ad, interview 4 people, make a decision, and hire someone the next week. It really needs to be multiple interviews over time. Your position needs to be good enough to have a candidate who will follow through on that. If they won't follow through on 4 interviews with you, then it's not, then they're not a good candidate anyway.
Okay.
More importantly, if you don't have the time to put into that, you've got a problem already, because your first hire is going to be incredibly impactful to your business. This is 100% of your labor force. If you've only spent an hour with them beforehand, you probably are going to make the wrong decision. So you want to work until your confidence is around 95%. Really sure this person's going to work out. Then you make the job offer, then you onboard, and you're on and on into your recurring people processes.
Awesome. So I'm glad you broke that process down, because like with me at first, I was looking for an intern. I ended up having to hire a virtual assistant to do like part-time stuff until I actually find someone that I can hire, because of I guess the interview process. Like I think my issue was with basically the screening process when it comes to the resumes. So I understand that you said that, if they didn't meet the minimum requirements, and if they have like grammatical errors on their resume, then you go ahead and X those off and move on, and help narrow it down. But what are some other things that we can look for on the resume that will help you decide if this is a potential candidate, or do I need to X them out, to give like a better idea of what actual candidates to actually really, really look for? Because I think that was one of my issues. Because some of them, they might have met the minimum requirements. But however, I know with some other things that I can look at on the resume to determine whether or not I need to consider them to be a candidate.
Good question. One reason you may have had trouble screening is because your job description or your job analysis was not specific enough.
Okay.
In a small business, people seem to think that, T, you're going to hire the next T. I would like you to assist me with this whole thing. That is not your first hire. I highly recommend that against that. Instead, your first hire needs to be very specific. Don't try to hire a VA is a type of employee almost nowadays. It's like someone you hire overseas who hangs out and does things for you. But think about it in terms of the job you're trying to do. If for you run a podcast, maybe you need a podcast producer, someone who's going to take these videos, fix up the audio. They need to know how to do basic audio work, basic video work. They need to know how to post on social media. They need to know how to make thumbnails. They need to know how to use marketing software to email all of your subscribers, etc. That's a job. Be my assistant. Not a job. It's not a job. You can't tell. That's why a lot of times in large companies, when you have things like true executive assistants, right?
Yes.
That's their friend. What is the job requirement? I trust you implicitly. You very rarely get assigned an executive assistant. An executive assistant is someone who comes with you over the years. So it's very hard to screen for. I don't know what you were hiring for, but if you can't tell from the resumes whether they're an immediate fit, at least a skill fit, then your skills are not defined well enough.
Okay.
So for example, when I was hiring, just recently, I'm hiring a new tax specialist. I actually have 4 interviews later on today over this. In the job analysis, we talked about this person needs to be able to file these kinds of taxes. They need to know how to amend them. They need to have familiarity with payroll software, all these kind of things. I put that job description up with the ad. And then in the ad, I said, This is not an app. Do not apply. This is not a job for someone who has a passing familiarity with payroll. This is not a job for someone who once worked in a payroll department. This is not a job for someone who prepared individual tax returns. This is a job for someone who knows this specific form, 941X. If you haven't heard of a 941X, don't apply. If you haven't filled out at least 100 of them, don't apply. I put that ad up. I still got 300 applications in 4 days. But I can click through them quickly and see that most of them have a generic offer, introduction letter, a cover letter. So I'm applying for this job as a tax specialist. Okay. Only probably 1 out of 10 of them said, I think I'd be a perfect fit for your job because I used to do this for, ADP, and attached as my resume. And I look at their resume and it's, tax specialist did this thing. I can be very specific because I'm looking for a very niche job. So out of those 300 applications, I set 4 interviews. And those 4 interviews were they were the only 4 people out of 300 who truly had the experience I was looking for. So I would just say that the broader the job, the harder it is to hire for, because it's so hard to have the confidence that they can do everything T wants whenever she wants it. That's a hard job to hire for. So think very specifically in the beginning. Get individual tasks off your desks. And I know it's hard to find full-time people that way. So think about it on a part-time thing. Say, I need a bookkeeper. I need a marketing person. I need a receptionist, someone to manage my emails. Think of it in very discrete tasks, and try to put that together. And if it's a bunch of individual discrete tasks that maybe would add up to a full-time job, define out those discrete tasks and put those all in your job analysis and description, so that when you're interviewing, you can go through your list and say, okay, tell me about a time you managed someone else's emails. Nope, you didn't do that. Okay. Tell me about your time managing a social media account. How did that work? What did it look like? Cool. How did it go? What was your results? What was the hardest thing about it? All right, she's got that. Tell me about a time you've worked, you say on here that this job requires being able to edit audio. Work with me on that. How would you do it? Here's a scenario. What would you do? So you need to have something to go by, or you're just wasting your time.
Awesome. That's definitely good tips.
Excuse me.
That's definitely good tips, especially when it comes to interviewing, and actually going through the interviews and asking those certain questions just to test their knowledge and see if they're knowledgeable about what they're doing. Because, some people, I have run into experience where they have the stuff that they say they can do it on a resume, but then when it comes time to do it, they'll be like, oh, what is that? Well, your resume specifically says that you have experience in doing this. So it's like, now I have to teach you to do something that you say you can already do based upon your resume.
Absolutely. You got to ask during the interview, not just, did you do it? But you got to ask them to tell you how they did it, what problems they encountered. A great question I ask is, when you did this before, you did it inside, this environment, that kind of thing. What would you change about what your company provided? Or you did it on your own as a, freelancer. If you could have any tool in the world to do this with, like, what would be a support thing you could use? Anyone who's ever done anything knows I didn't have the most expensive piece of software out there to work on it. It would be I love doing all of it, but God, I hate typing this one piece up. I wish I had someone who could help me with that. So you can make the interview aspirational. What would you like? It gets the employee excited, but it also makes it very obvious that they don't know what they're talking about when they go, for my SEO audits, I just need a good word processor and some time. The resources I need are some good training on SEO audits. It's like, okay, all right, good. That's a good resource, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. So you gotta ask them those questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rhamy, so much for coming on and being on the show today as a guest and giving us helpful tips. So I'm gonna share the social media handles. Let us know how we can get in contact with you. If our listeners want to render your service.
Yeah. So peopleprocesses.com, PEOPLEPROCESSES, peopleprocesses.com is where you can find me. You can also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all those places. Reach out. What we do is help small, medium-sized businesses take that entire HR piece and just work with somebody else, or learn how to do it internally, where we can train you, we can provide you the tools, techniques, and strategies to do it yourself. So we're very excited to work with those. We work with hundreds of companies all across the United States. Our smallest clients have around 4 or 5 employees. Our largest clients have close to 1,000, and we can be a great service to you, I hope. If you have any questions about it at peopleprocesses.com, there's a resources tab where you can listen to my podcast. You can also download some checklists on there. And since we talked about it, we actually have an interview checklist right there under the resources tab that will help you lay out your interview questions ready for your first interview. I hope you check them out. And if you need anything, just reach out to us.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to check it out because I learned some tips today that I was not even aware of. So
Awesome.
Thank you for that. So you guys, if you want to get in contact with me, my number is 910-317-0396. The email address is contact@mjfinancial.biz. The website is www.mjfinancial.biz. You can find this episode, you guys, on Anchor, and you can also find this episode on the YouTube channel for the video. So thank you once again, Rhamy, for being a guest on the show. I highly appreciate you today.
Have a great one. It was good to see you all.
All right, and you guys, we will see you on the next episode of Tips with T.